Welcome. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we are delighted that you have welcomed us into your home. You know that we would love to hear from you. So send us an email with your question or your comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. And today we are very excited to have back with us Dr. Theresa Burke. She is the foundress of Rachel's Vineyard, Grief to Grace, and Duty to Heal. These outstanding programs are offered in group retreat format, and they provide a recovery process for victims of trauma. And these retreats are offered throughout the world and have been translated in over 35 languages. And right now, as of date, they are in over 50 countries. You could go to rachelsvineyard.org or grieftograce.org. And Theresa was sharing just how her beautiful surrender, how she said, you know, Lord, I'm not an expert in many things. I'm a jack of all trades, but I surrender. I say yes to you. God, use me however you choose. And in that beautiful surrender, God has birthed a mighty healing mercy ministry out of.
It has to be among the largest healing ministries in the world, healing post-traumatic stress disorder, its impact upon a person's life, upon their brain, and how the brain is functioning or being segmented through trauma. And she's developed a beautiful format to help people with post-abortion healing, sexual abuse, violence, war, traumas that come about through that. And so she's just developed something, the Lord's developed something through her that's absolutely beautiful, and hopefully you can benefit by it. You can go to rachelsvineyard.org, rachelsvineyard.org, or grieftograce.org. Hope, healing is on its way. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Well, we are so excited to have Dr. Theresa Burke with us. She is the foundress of Rachel's Vineyard, Grief to Grace, and Duty to Heal. And these outstanding programs are offered in group retreat format, and they provide a recovery process for victims of trauma. Now, these retreats are offered throughout the world, and they've been translated in over 35 languages, and as of date, they are in 50 countries. You could go to rachelsvineyard.org, just put in your zip code, find out if there's a retreat near you, and sign up for your healing, for your mercy, and for your grace. And then the other ministry is called grieftograce.org. Now, as you know, Theresa had a beautiful show with us yesterday, but some of you didn't get to watch that. And I strongly encourage you to go back, go to ewtn.com/on-demand and look this up, and you want to hear this. But Theresa, for the people who are just tuning in right now, tell our family very briefly what Rachel's Vineyard Healing Retreat weekends offer, the emotional, the spiritual elements of healing that they provide.
It provides an opportunity to get away with other women and men. And we also have grandparents coming to grieve, and even those in the industry of abortion. So it's open to all sorts of people, and couples as well. So it's an opportunity to unpack the trauma experience and enter a sensory-based treatment that specializes in helping you to grieve your loss. A lot of people believe they don't have a right to grieve because it's something they chose, but we also know that there are so many people that were coerced into unwanted abortions, that many people were violating a fundamental moral code that they had. Other people just felt that they were misinformed. They weren't given all the facts about it. And so there's a lot of devastation. It's an opportunity to unpack all that and connect with your child.
Yes. I like your expression, sensory-based treatments, because when we deal with PTSD and you read, well, what can be done, it's always speaking with someone, speaking with a psychologist, psychiatrist, and medication. You're saying you've got to address the senses and what's going on, the brain and what's happened there. And so you have sensory-based treatments. Joy and I made a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. I can't remember all the different rituals, as you mentioned, or the living parables. But I was saying to Joy, I keep seeing this thing of water that was there. And what were we doing with that during that Rachel's Vineyard retreat? And Joy said, it was like you would write down your sins on a piece of paper, and then if you put it in the water, it disappeared.
The paper disappeared.
So I don't know if you actually do that or not, but you do now. that really brought it home. Because it's one thing to say, Lord, forgive me my sins and cleanse me from all unrighteousness. It's another thing to write it down, see it disappear. You know, as far as east is from west, the Lord removes your sin. But you're actually experiencing that. You're kind of seeing that disappearing. And that's sort of what you're speaking about in terms of some of the ways that you bring this home to the senses, or give the opportunity to be touched in the senses. And of course, as you say, you know, Jesus is the one that's active in all of this, healing the mind and healing the senses and setting the captives free.
Well, we definitely do have a bowl of water where they entrust their children to the mercy of God, and they renew their baptismal prayer. There's no disappearing.
Oh, no
but,
disappearing?
but the sins are forgiven, and people can let them go. We know people who've been to Rachel's Vineyard that were to confession hundreds of times, but until you process that and allow yourself to grieve, and let the Lord minister to that wound, come in the middle of it, in the midst of it, fill it with his presence is what happens. And that transforms the wound into joy, into incredible love. And that brings forward mission for a lot of people who want to, who understand the loss that they've endured and they've suffered so long, and then they want to help others because this helped them. And that's why it's spread. That's how it's spread all over the world. Obviously, I couldn't travel everywhere with 5 kids and
Yes. Those who are forgiven much love much. And that's what's happening. These people have encountered the agape love of the Lord that set Mary Magdalene free and others free. And they want to return the gift. They want to give the gift away. They become, as John Paul II said, you'll become some of the most eloquent spokespersons on behalf of the gospel of life. Those who have forgiven much, love much. And that's what you're seeing with Rachel's Vineyard ministry, because they're carrying the ball.
Yeah, and I'm excited to share today how the Lord has raised up an army in Rachel's Vineyard, and I literally mean an army. We have boots on the ground in every country. So when it came to spreading grief to grace, they were ready for the next program. 65% of those people who came into Rachel's Vineyard, and we've done studies on this, had histories of sexual abuse. And there's absolutely a link between sexual abuse and abortion. I've written about it extensively, but for the most part, it's really when there is that history and there's already been a violation of the most intimate place, women are very susceptible to coercion, manipulation, and even some of the acting out sexual, earlier sexual awakening and sexual activity, because it's part of that. Certainly anybody who's been sex trafficked knows well, and we've had people on retreats who they play a game of cards to decide which pimp was going to take them to have abortion. So this is very, very embedded in a culture where we have $100 business in pornography, and more is coming about with the trafficking. But it's just a violation of human dignity at every level, and we need to heal the culture. We really need to heal the culture. But God's raised an army, and you were just saying about the woman who poured the ointment on Jesus. That is, to me, where they break open all the gifts that they have to pour it out in service to the Lord. And that's where, when I tell you some stories about how they're helping with Duty to Heal in the very first pilot, when I knew I really wanted to create a whole new retreat because it's a lot of work, the role that they played in that.
Well, tell us about Grief to Grace, the inception of that. how people reach you to participate. Where are people coming from? You mentioned people who are trafficked. It could be family abuse, could be within in the church. Are you seeing people from all these different areas that have experienced abuse, and then you're using your ways of healing their senses, their defilement, and setting them free? Who's participating?
Yeah, everybody. It was initially my idea to help the a sexual abuse crisis in the church, and I began this back in the 1990s. And with Rachel's Vineyard spreading all over the world, and little children at home, I didn't have a lot of extra time, as you can know, but but I just continued working on it and working on it. And then we actually launched it in like 2003 with the first pilots. And I piloted it for 10 years on many different, on children, on couples, on people with trans, on sex traffic victims. We in men groups and women groups. So we sort of did the whole thing. And I took a long time to be very cautious and careful about how that was developing. But when I went to question everybody, I said, like those that were in the field of abuse, I told them about my program, and nobody wanted anything to do with Jesus, especially because they thought that people are so triggered by God who've had clergy abuse. Even people in the church said, that they wouldn't use such a program and that it would be triggering. And they said that victims are too angry to be healed. And so people are angry when their wound festers and they're hurting, can't live a normal life because of the PTSD, and that they are very reactive and that they can go numb, as we talked about in the last show. So that trauma affects every level of living, especially complex PTSD, which is usually it's like a worse form of trauma because it's sort of wired into the nervous system and it's been prolonged exposure to trauma. So children who are abused and then go on to be teens abused and then adults that are in abusive relationships, this is those that suffer from complex PTSD. So our programs don't deal with all that. And we have many priests and nuns who also come to Grief to Grace, and they're dealing with sometimes childhood trauma. And one of the interesting things is that authority figures can become very triggering to them if they have unresolved childhood. But then there's all those who went into seminaries and religious orders with very beautiful vocations and then experienced abuse of authority, some of the grooming behaviors that goes on. And we know well enough now how much that has corrupted and disfigured uh, people's sense of safety in the church. So I thought that, and remember, all this is inspired by Our Lady, who wants to bring people to her Son because she knows he has the capacity and the will and the desire to heal them in the deepest places. So this would be just something that the Lord would want, and we can't do that outside the context of Jesus Christ and
Right.
bringing people to him, like the pool of Bethesda on stretchers, asking,
Yes.
do you want to be well? So we have many meditations. Grief to Grace and Duty to Heal are both week-long programs. The complex trauma requires more time, more more attention and more sessions because it's really a lifetime problem for a lot of people, or it's just really devastating. And many have had abortion, and this is the next step for them to take when they've had abuse behind them.
So you have your grief to grace and your duty to heal in a week-long time, because you said like it's complicated. It takes longer for emotionally, physically, spiritually to get
Unravel it.
yourself. You're right, where you're having all those roots unraveled inside your soul, and you have a great team of people who assist you to do that. So people can go, how would they get in touch? Would they just go to the website grieftoggrace.org and then they could find out where retreats are happening in their area throughout the world? How does that work?
That's correct. All the retreats throughout the world are listed there. I think we're in 25 countries now, and what language it's in. And there's many places throughout the United States that have the support of their local bishops. And it's just a beautiful program. And I'm so pleased of the number of religious people are healing, because in so many ways we need to heal the healers, right? We need to
Right.
heal those who have the sacramental life that is so essential for our full recovery. And a lot of people don't even want to approach that until they've started unpacking some of the grief and these fundamental questions of betrayal and where was God? And how could he allow this to happen to me? And why didn't anybody stop it? These are all the questions of moral injury, frankly.
You know, you make the point that's so important that a retreat is really imperative for you. That we can go to individual counseling, we go there for a half hour, for an hour, and things can be accomplished, but then we have to stop at a particular time, just when things are being opened up and say, well, I'll see you next week, here's some things for you to do. The extension of time, whether it's 3 days or a week, in a safe environment, a common understanding, your rituals that you're doing, the various formats. So just that it gets unbroken and that it continues. I want our viewers to hear that, because there's nothing to substitute for that. Also, you know, what do you do after these events? Is there follow-up? What's taking place?
There's follow-up, and there's reunions, and there's books that we recommend, and a lot of people want to become involved in the ministry, and so they can help around it. It's the healing communities that we're creating, which are so essential, where you can live the faith. What people say after these retreats is that they don't necessarily want more therapy, but they want guidance in living the gospel, because it's saved life in many cases. And the healings and what people say are so dramatic. We've done research, we've done follow-ups, like depression inventories, anxiety um, inventories before and after, and it's just life changing. Everyone uses that word, life changing.
Yeah.
And uh, again, they want to go into service. They have all these gifts, and they have an incredible compassion. What people find so beautiful on the retreats is that everybody gets it. You don't have to explain it the way you might to a clinician. And clinicians can be very helpful with a lot of
Yes.
things, and there's certainly a place for them. But I haven't seen anybody do what I've seen Jesus do. And this is why there's over 800,000 volunteers around the world, because they all say they want front row seats to the miracles. Honestly, Jim and Joy, it's like watching Jesus walk the earth and perform miracles right in front of your eyes. Things, even the teams, even myself, he never ceases to blow me away. And that's what we
Yes.
heard from the the last retreat
Yes.
of the Ukrainians that came. They were blown away by what they saw and what they felt in their own bodies.
Theresa,
By
we're going to take a break and hold you over for the final segment. You mentioning Ukraine, and I want you to unpack a little bit more fully duty to heal. What's that got to do with Ukraine, or maybe even Russia as well, in terms of healing from war and violence through the formats and exercises that you're doing? We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, we're closing out our conversation with Dr. Theresa Burke. Now, Theresa, before we went to break, we were talking about duty to heal, and you did mention that medical doctors and psychologists had traveled from the Ukraine to the United States, where they attended a duty to heal weekend. Tell our family about that.
Well, they came, and the idea actually came from the what we would consider the Pope of the Ukrainian Church, of the Orthodox
Yeah.
Ukrainian Church, and there was a special meeting of all of the Ukrainian priests, and the subject came up about how people were feeling, and they were actually using a Rachel's Vineyard discussion kind of a question that we have in our retreats. And the priest that was leading that discussion is a Rachel's Vineyard priest from up in Canada. So he asked the question, and you're supposed to speak the truth of what you're feeling in the moment. And he said, I just feel like I want to die. I want to die. And all of the Ukrainians feel the same. And so he remembered about Duty to Heal. He's told them about it. Next thing you know, they're planning to come. And so that all just happened, and they got their visas. And they plan to take it back and train 5,000 priests
Praise the Lord.
throughout the Ukrainian church in the world. And so please pray for this effort. And the other interesting thing is that we have a psychologist from Russia who single-handedly spread Rachel's Vineyard to like 9 different cities and was training teams and clinicians and everything like that. So she asked for permission to translate the program into Russian, and she shared stories of the people that she's been seeing in her practice. And she said, even if the war would end tomorrow, and that was 2 years ago when this happened, she said that the trauma would go on for generations because of the level of horror and even moral injury, because they have relatives in the other country and they're forced into war with each other, the tragedies, the suffering, all of that. So we're working closely with Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and then Russia with this. And meanwhile, for all the U.S. veterans, and it's also open to first responders, it's a week-long retreat. Our healing site is at New Heart of Texas in Houston, and they've just finished training many, many teams up so that they can now help spread this. And we have a big lineup of dioceses across and different priests that are reaching out to be able to offer this program in their areas. But for right now, it's a beautiful anointed program, and we're just so happy that
Yes.
God has a plan here
Amen.
using scriptures, meditations, and the sensory-based
Yes.
treatment, cleansing rituals, and purification things so that they can unpack it all.
Theresa, we can't thank you enough for your willingness to be used by God all over the world, one of the largest healing ministries in the entire world, setting people free, being healed after abortion, victims of violence and war, sexual abuse. Anytime these things raise their head, God raises up ministries like Rachel's Vineyard. So God bless you, and God bless all of your loved ones. You're an important part of this EWCN family. You're never alone, and you're always at home with Jim and Joy. Bye now.